Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. If you're unfamiliar with World Spine Care, which I know the people on this call are familiar, but for those watching this later, World Spine Care is a global nonprofit. We've established 7 clinics in 5 countries over the past 10 years to provide care for low back pain and neck pain. And that's what we focus on. And many of our volunteers are physical therapists and chiropractors. And one of our board members, who is a chiropractor joining us today, is Dr. Tom Hyde. Thank you for being here today, Tom.
Thank you for having me very, very much.
A while back, Tom approached me with this idea of sharing some of his photography as a benefit for World Spine Care. And sure enough, Tom has traveled all over the world in his role as a well-known sports chiropractor, lecturing and training all around the world. And while he does that, takes a few photos now and then. And so it's been fun, Tom, to look through some of your photos and to hear some of the stories we've talked. And I just wanted to share a number of those stories with our audience. How did you originally get into photography as a hobby?
That's a great question. And I'll go back to my Marine Corps days. And by the way, I'm leaving tomorrow for a Marine Corps reunion of the people that I served with in Japan and Vietnam and several other places. We were a group who were involved in intelligence work back then, where we were intercepting various countries around the world. And my job at one point was intercepting Russian transmissions with Morse code. So I did that for several years. And then in Vietnam, of course, we were listening to the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese with their transmissions. So to get back to your question, when I was in Kamasei, Japan, another Marine came into the squad bay one day and he was all excited. He said, "Come on, Tom, you got to go with me right now. I just got a new camera and you need to get the same camera that I got." I said, "Well, hang on. I don't know anything about photography." He said, "No, just come on, come on." So he grabbed me and we went over to the PX, and before you know it, I had a new camera with lenses and spent a lot of money that I didn't really have. But that started it. And then right away, I went out and tried to use the camera. And the very first picture I took was, I would say, a lady, maybe 50 to 60 years old, standing out in the rice paddies, taking care of pulling rice. And I still think that's one of the best photos I ever took. I love it. I don't have it just to display right now because it's a slide and I didn't have a chance to display that. But that started the whole thing. And I've just been in love with photography since. And I think you know that I have over 500 cameras from all over the world.
Yes.
I've been collecting for many, many years.
And you sent me this photo of you was this in Vietnam or in Japan?
No, that was right after I arrived in Vietnam, and I'm on Hill 327. Doesn't mean anything to you, but it was outside of Da Nang, and I could, in the far distance, see the airport that was continually bombed. And my first night there, we had incoming mortars and rockets, so that was a welcome, I think. But I was getting ready to stand duty in that particular photo. Then I had my flak jacket on, my weapon, and pretty soon I had the eve watch. And I was the watch took place on a bunker, and we had sandbags around that where I stayed in that little bunker. And then I had a 2-hour watch. So we watched for things happening for each of us for 2 hours. So that was the first shot that I had taken. Someone took that of me, and that's where the urinal, I hate to tell you, but that was used very frequently by us.
And now, after serving in the Marines, and I think you did about 5 years active duty, what led you then to become a chiropractor?
That's another great story. My father had undergone a series of injuries in an auto accident, and we were living in Thomasville, Georgia, where I'm from originally. And then my grandmother on my mother's side lived in Sarasota. So when he was recovering, he sent us to stay with my grandmother in Sarasota. And then when he came to pick us up, he went to see a chiropractor. It was the first chiropractor he had ever seen. And that was Ken Perhide, who graduated from Logan College. And I would go with my father as a young boy to the chiropractor, and he would talk to me about becoming a chiropractor. And this went on for years. And then I went away in the service. I came back. I started teaching school and everything. And I saw the chiropractor. I'd go to him for treatment and things like that. And one day I just got fed up with the assistant principal. I couldn't take him anymore. So I spoke to Susan. We got married. We took off for Logan College. And it was a great experience, and I'll never look back. It's one of the best things I've ever done.
It sounds like, a lot of chiropractors I've spoken to. I used to have a podcast where I'd talk to chiropractors about how, they got into the profession. And there are some well-known individuals in the profession. I'm thinking of, obviously there's Scott Haldeman involved with World Spine Care, but he had, generations before him that led into chiropractic. But there are others like Donald Murphy who seem to just sort of say, well, sounds like an interesting job, and jump in and really become, impactful in the profession and having a long, long career. And so it sounds like while you had that early influence, it doesn't sound like you spent a lot of time deliberating and comparing other options, other than it sounds like you were a teacher to start with.
Yeah, I taught eighth grade science and physical education, and I did have a pretty good time there. And I also coached junior varsity basketball at the high school. And I didn't mind the teaching. It was the assistant principal, and he and I just did not see eye to eye on anything. And I just said, I can't work in an environment like this. So I think things worked out for the best. I'm so glad that I went to Logan, or at least became a chiropractor. I didn't really know of other schools at that time, but I got a great education there, and I still love the school, and I love the profession.
And was it that early experience with teaching PE and being in the Marines, being, quite physically active, that led you to focus in sports?
Yeah, I think so. I had played baseball growing up as a kid in Little League and things like that. And I played flag football in the Marine Corps. We did have a five-man tackle team. I coached it, actually. I didn't play that, but I'd always been involved with that. Plus I ran marathons, and I ran a lot of races all over. I did some bicycle rides, 1,500-mile bike rides and things like that. And I just have always been someone who loved to do things like that. And then I got involved in mountain climbing because we decided to raise money for prostate cancer. So we climbed Kilimanjaro a couple of times. We went to South America and climbed a ton of mountains all through the Andes, the highest being Aconcagua. So I've always been athletic and wanted to do things to help. And then I would always combine something for a charity of some kind. And Dr. Sportelli was one of those who, I can't thank him enough for showing us the way. He and Dick Vincent, two of the greatest people that I've met in this profession. And that's not to take anything away from others. But, we've all had mentors, and they certainly were at the top of my list.
And photography remained a hobby throughout all these years, and you've certainly traveled the world teaching and training other chiropractors and different techniques. What did photography mean to you as you were able to travel and climb mountains and all of this stuff? What role did photography play for you?
Well, when I did all of these things, I was the official photographer for each of these groups. So I took photos of all of the climbers and the people helping us and things like that. And then I shared all that with those, and then they shared them with their families and with friends and things like that. So it made me feel very good that they would utilize my photos to share with their families and things like that. So it's such a great feeling when you can take a photograph and someone really enjoys it. Now, I've done a lot of pretty bad photographs over the years, but I've learned to try to limit the numbers of lousy photographs.
I'd love to share a few of the photos that you've provided for World Spine Care as a benefit. And for those watching, these are available for purchase on our website. We've collected about 17 photographs that are from the regions where World Spine Care has clinics. We have clinics in Botswana, Ghana, the Dominican Republic, and in India, and a new one opening very soon, if not already, up in northern Manitoba. So many of these photos do come from those regions. And as we take a look through, Tom, if you can just tell us maybe a little bit about where you were, if you can remember, and what you might remember about these photos.
Yeah, thank you very much. This particular photograph, of course, is a male lion, and this was taken in South Africa on a safari. He was very, very close to us. He was not very far away. And it's kind of intimidating at times when you have these animals like this that are so close. And one night we had actually two big, huge male lions about 5 and 7 feet from where we were, and there are no doors on these vehicles. So we were just sitting there very quietly and watching them stare at us and just hoping they would move on. But these are majestic animals. It's all animals. I just love all animals. I love the outdoors. And having the opportunity to photograph them is incredible.
Yeah, many of my favorites are from the African region. We'll look at a few more, but there's another one that I just keep looking at and really enjoy, and that is this photo of the Taj Mahal, I believe.
That's correct. And it's so funny. When I was in the Marine Corps, they sent me to language school, and my language happened to be Hindi Urdu. So I had always wanted to go to India, but the Marine Corps never sent me there. They sent me to Vietnam, which I couldn't speak the language. They sent me to Japan, which I didn't speak the language. But when I finally got a chance to go as a civilian a few years ago to India, my wife and I just fell in love with it. And the Taj Mahal was just a highlight, just one of many highlights there. It's such a great country. The colors are incredible. The food is outstanding. The people are wonderful. I would encourage anyone that has an opportunity to definitely go to India.
Of course, the food is absolutely amazing. I think this is another one from India, this sentinel outside of a temple.
That is correct. Yeah, the monkeys certainly love to be there. And when when we were waiting to get into the Taj Mahal, the monkeys were climbing above us on the wires, and they like to just try to urinate on those below. So you have to be very, very careful when you're standing in line to get in there, because there are hundreds of people in that line. And it's a narrow little place where you have to walk to get in there. So you have to be really cautious about these monkeys. And then they will, if you have things, they'll come over and try to grab them from you as well. So you'll hear,
Yes.
particularly women, always screaming.
They are nature's pickpocket.
They are.
And where were you traveling when you took this photo of these amazingly colorful buses?
I think that was actually, if I remember correctly, it may have been on the Outer Banks here in North Carolina. I think
really?
Or it might have been Georgia, one of the islands in Georgia, but it's one of these southern states just had these lined up. I thought they were just, the colors of them captured me.
Oh, that's fascinating. I was under the impression that this was in India or Bali or somewhere in Asia. So yeah, very close to home, actually.
Yeah.
We have these great photos of the giraffes in Africa.
Yeah, this particular giraffe, we were on a safari and we were watching it. And while we were watching it, it gave birth. So it's interesting to see a baby giraffe fall about 6 feet and then struggle to get up on those spindly legs. And we're watching the mother, and the mother, there's the two of them. And then she, was licking the calf, and then we watched the calf have its first suckle from the mother. So it was just an incredible experience to see this happen in nature. So that's why I love photography. I love nature, getting out. You never know what you're going to run across. There's just so much to see. It's incredible. And I can't get over people who want to go out and shoot these animals. I do it with a camera and it doesn't harm them. But I'm just not into having people go out and kill these wonderful, beautiful animals.
What I love about nature photography, whether animals or landscapes, is just seeing that beauty and getting close to it. But I imagine some of them are difficult. We showed the lion that you don't want to get too close to, and I understand this bird can be quite difficult to capture as well.
Yeah, thank you. That's one of my favorite birds. It's not a very large bird. It's a little bit larger than a sparrow, I would say, but that's a lilac-breasted roller, multicolored, and they're very skittish. It took me forever to capture that particular bird because every time you get close to them, they take off. So finally took that from a vehicle, and I had the guide follow that bird until I was finally able to get that photograph. And it took us probably an hour of chasing that bird down until I finally got that photo. But they're just magnificent birds.
And what type of camera are you using? What lens to be able to get it so close?
Well, that's another great question. Now I have, excuse me 1 second. I have this particular Canon, if you can see that. Can you see this camera?
Yeah.
So it's a fairly heavy camera, but I have a 24-105 lens on this camera, and I use that. It does a great job. But I also have a 500 millimeter lens that I can connect to this. And when something's really far away, I'll use that 500 millimeter lens. And then I have several lenses in between. Some are single focal length, and others are telephotos that range from, say, 20 to 60 or 70 with the range on them. So I've got a number of that. And then may I show you a couple of others?
Yeah, I'd love to see some of your other cameras. I know you have quite the collection.
I've got writing in front of mine, so I can't tell what's
we
up
can
there.
see that.
You can see it, can't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a watch called an Expo, but it's made to look like a pocket watch. And this is from 1904. So this is a long time ago, and the camera still works. You just have to get film for it. This is another, I like all kinds of cameras. These are more miniature cameras, but this is a Mamiya, and this is another small camera that was used for spying, and another one to put in your pocket and carry around with you because it's easy to hide. One more, this is a Japanese camera. This is a Stecky camera, and I actually have film for
this one.
Yes, Steky, Stecky.
Okay.
And it comes apart, but this has a little filter that goes on the end of the lens here. So I can do this, and I actually have a little case for this that's made out of leather that I can put in. I have several of these, and then the top of this just pops off, and you can put your film in there, and then you just put that back on, and you're off and running. To go to a couple of larger cameras, a lot of people will recognize the Leica. This is probably one of the best lens makers in the world, the Leica Corporation, and cameras. I mean, these are phenomenal cameras, and this is an older Leica, but I love it. These things still work. So I keep those, and I keep them in very good condition. And I've got one more here. I won't bore you with all the others that I have here, but this is one that a lot of people probably may not recognize, but this is a Mercury camera. That's the name of the brand of this particular camera. And it's another 35 millimeter camera. You have the opportunity to look through here when you're focusing on someone or something. Then on the back, you have all these different devices here to help you with whatever you're going to do. If you're shooting at a roll of film at 100 and the light is low or whatever, you can use this dial to move that and then change whatever your exposure is going to be. So to me, they're very, very interesting. They all have a history, and like I say, I've got well over 500 of them, and I have them displayed. I look at them constantly. I'm amazed by the engineering of these cameras.
And that tends to be the more expensive part of the camera, right?
Yeah, that's true. Inside a lens, you will have typically other parts to it. So you won't have just the lens on the back and the front. You may have several elements inside the lens itself. So when you get into the large lenses, I didn't have one here to show you right now, but there may have 3 or 4 or 5 elements inside. And the more elements you have, the better quality typically the lens is. And they are more expensive by far.
I would imagine for this photo, you had a decent zoom lens as well. Can you tell us about what was going on here?
Actually, I had a zoom lens on, but not a very long one. We were very close. We were only probably, I would say, 20 to 30 feet from that leopard.
Wow.
In South Africa coming down from its kill. And we were fortunate. We had, I guess it depends on how you look at it. There's some people who are not into having animals kill other animals, but that's nature. It's when humans kill them that I don't like. That's why I love photography. But this one came down and then it jumped from there down to the ground and went away. But we had 2 others that were up in the trees with their impalas that they had killed. And then what they do is they'll leave it up there so that other animals can't get it. Then they'll come down and go drink and do whatever they have to do and then come back up there. So it's great to watch them.
Wow, that's amazing. And we'll look at one more here. I don't think we talked about this, the crown pigeon.
Yeah, that's a beautiful bird, isn't it? This particular bird was inside and walking around, and I happened to shoot it in a cage. You can see part of the fence behind it, but it followed me all around, and it wasn't afraid of me at all. So let me take a number of pictures, but I just love the red eye and the blue feathers, and just a magnificent bird.
And I was reading about animals with my boys earlier this week, and I believe that the male crown pigeon is the one that has just an immense tail. Is that right?
Yes, yes. And when you see them, they will spread that tail just kind of like a peacock, but they don't have the multicolored feathers as the peacock does. And they're smaller, but they're still a pretty good sized bird.
And they'll do a bit of a dance, I think. I'm sure if someone watches Blue Planet or one of those nature shows, they'll be able to find that.
Absolutely.
Well, for those again watching, Tom has made these photos available to World Spine Care as a benefit. Here's the website.
Yeah, and you had the kudu up there, that male kudu. That was a very interesting one. I was hiking and on the eastern side and outside of St. Lucia in South Africa, and that big antelope walked right in front of me. So I was very, very close to it. I wasn't quite sure what he was going to do, but then there were several females that were following him from behind.
Yeah, that's one of my other favorites. So by visiting our website, and we'll put a link below the description of this video, and you can find it from the homepage as well. These are the full resolution digital files of all of these photos, and you can purchase individually or groups of them, and then you receive a license that provides the opportunity to do essentially whatever you'd like with it other than resell it. So whether it's having a print done that you can have in your office or in your clinic, or doing, perhaps using it as wallpaper on your digital devices. So again, a link will be down below for you to find. And I just want to say thank you again, Tom, for this idea and for sharing this wonderful talent with World Spine Care and with our audience.
Well, I appreciate you having me on here very, very much. And I hope that some of the people watching will partake of purchasing those. And then I hope that they'll have great memories once they get them in their house and know that somebody out here, many of us love animals and we'd rather preserve them in photos than to see them stuffed somewhere.
Wonderful. And I believe we do have one or two people that are attending live. I'd take a moment now to ask for any questions
Sure.
if you have for Tom. You can turn on your video or your audio and join us. Barbara did say thank you for the photos and reminding her of all the traveling and medical projects. And it's very late for her in Germany, so she jumped off, but
well, thank you.
We'll send her the recording. And I'm not sure if Lou is able to join with the audio and to ask any questions. I'm curious what plans you might have in retirement. You don't see patients anymore, but you don't have to put the camera down. What are some next projects?
Well, I think, I just got back in January from a trip to the Falkland Islands to South George Island, which is one of the most beautiful islands I've ever been on, and then Antarctica. So I took a number of different animals down there. We saw killer whales. We saw 4 other species of whales, including the humpbacks, which were many of them very close to the ship. We had all kinds of pelagic birds and other birds around us during that trip. We also had 9 different species of penguins, ranging from the rock hoppers, which are only a foot high, and they tend to like the Falkland Islands, and then on into the beautiful, I actually have a little card of some of the different birds that we saw and the animals during that trip. So you can see here, for example, look, here, this is the emperor penguin and then the king penguin here, but this macaroni penguin I love this little hairdo that this one has. And then some of the other birds that we saw during that trip. And then here on the front, you got the macaroni penguin and then the gentoo penguin. So these are
no idea there were so many.
Oh yeah, this is just the ones there, and then you've got penguins when you get to New Zealand, and you've got a different variety of penguins again when you get to Australia. So there are lots of penguins all over the world.
That's fascinating. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in. So I just want to thank you again for a nice conversation about these wonderful photos that you've provided, and really look forward to sharing them with everyone else.
Well, I really appreciate that. And if anybody listening has any other questions, that you're free to give them my email address or anything, and I'll be more than happy to try to answer those. And thank you again for this opportunity.